to another Tipping Points. Our mission is to seek truth and spread love and certainly bring ideas, concepts that you may have never heard because they're not on mainstream media at all, but also look at things that are out there maybe from a different angle. So Antifa, first of all, what they say it means is anti-fascist.
Right. It's a shortening of anti-fascist, Antifa,
Right.
or Antifa. So if you're anti something, we have to understand what that something is. And so I'd like to quote what fascism is. I mean, I want to quote because this way I'll get it right, because we need to have a good, solid understanding of what fascism is before we can talk about anti-fascism. But fascism is a political system based on a very powerful leader, state control of social and economic life, and no expression of political disagreement allowed. The single powerful leader
Controls
everything.
every aspect of life.
Every aspect of life. And if you disagree,
Don't.
at best you go to jail. At worst you get shot.
Yeah. And that's exactly what happened in Italy.
Okay.
Mussolini, who was the real big progenitor of fascism.
So that really is where the history of anti-fascism comes from, is that period of time during World War II where we had these very strong political leaders that believed in a government that controls everything. And if you disagreed with them, you were imprisoned or shot.
That's the roots of anti-fascism.
That's the roots of anti-fascism. And as you pointed out in an earlier discussion, there were some very good people who were, their lives were destroyed for their anti-fascist views.
Sure. Yeah. Ministers and other great people in Italy, Germany.
It seems to me, John, you've done the most research on this, but I've done some. But it seems to me almost that Antifa is actually the most fascist group or expression that I've ever seen in my lifetime.
If I disagree with somebody that is Antifa, what do they do to me? If I stand up and I say I don't believe what you believe,
Well, in the wrong circumstance, they might club you on the
I might
head.
club you on the head.
Well,
So let's talk a little bit about what gives them the right to actually be Antifa. The First Amendment to the Constitution. And I think there's a very important point in here, and I want to once again read this very short paragraph because it is so fundamental to our lives. But the First Amendment to the Constitution reads that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And I think peaceably assemble is really the fundamental to our freedom of speech.
It is fundamental freedom of speech. And this is the First Amendment to the Constitution.
It's the very first right. It's not the 42nd Amendment. It's the First Amendment.
It's the First Amendment, and we see it, we really do see it under attack
So
every time we turn on the news.
it seems like, again, I have to say this because it seems like, because my observation is that these anti-fascist people who call themselves anti-fascists, it seems to me that their biggest gripe with the world is free speech.
Right.
So which would be the most fascist thing to be against?
Right.
Well, I think
Is that
we do want to remember that in both Stalin's Russia, in Germany, in Italy, if you said the wrong thing, I mean, if you said the wrong thing,
Mm-hmm. Or somebody said you said the wrong thing.
well, yes, absolutely.
He said, she
you were
said.
pulled out of your home and you were shot.
So
period.
if I go downtown,
For saying it, we just have to remember this is the nature of fascism.
so if I go down to Pioneer Square and there's an anti-fascist display and I state that I don't really believe in what they're doing, what happens to me?
Well, what I understand is, if you say something or stand for something they disagree with,
Okay.
and you're clear on that,
Okay.
then what I've actually seen is people getting clubbed in the head, getting shot with mace.
It's a fact.
But what about hate speech? Shouldn't we outlaw hate speech? Shouldn't we make it a law that we're not allowed to say hateful things?
Well, I think if we go back to the First Amendment of the Constitution, I can say hateful things as long as I do it peaceably.
But there's a big movement. A lot of people are saying that the First Amendment does not protect hate speech.
We've gotten into trouble by endeavoring to define the nature of speech, by endeavoring to define what is hateful what is loving speech? And I know some viewers might be thinking right now, well, anyone can tell. Well, maybe not anyone can tell, but what I know for certain is that once we start saying, you can't say it, whatever the it is,
We become fascists.
There you go. And at minimum, we're on a slippery slope. At minimum.
But the line I was talking about is if I say something purposely to incite violence in others, I'm not peaceably assembling.
Yeah,
That's my intent.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, if you're doing it in public, in a public
if I'm
setting.
doing it in a public setting, and my intent is to incite disruption and disrupt society, then I believe
In a violent way.
that in a violent way, then that is not peaceably assembling. So you may be in violation of your First Amendment rights.
We've seen stories, I know that maybe we've all seen stories of young people wearing T-shirts to school that talk about the religion that they believe in, and then being sent home or punished or
Right.
something, and that most of us would see that as
That's clearly a violation of
covered.
the First Amendment.
It is?
The First Amendment is very clear in stating that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion.
And a school teacher really is an extension of the government. It's
It
a
is,
public school.
absolutely.
And
It is-
for
it
this
is the
school
government.
teacher to say, you can't wear this T-shirt that says
Whatever it is.
whatever your religious beliefs are,
Mhm.
is a violation of the First Amendment,
Absolutely, my right to free speech,
violation of free speech.
unless it incites riot.
Well,
But if I want to say Satan loves Satan, Satan lives, is that inciting a riot? No, it's a belief that I may or may not have.
Yeah.
And I have every right to say that.
The thing I think that people don't understand that are, first of all, hate speech isn't a category for real, it's made up.
Okay.
But
Right.
it's a brand new term, just like
Yes.
anti-fascist that is the
Yes.
fascist. But it seems to me that what those who are asking that there be a new category called hate speech and it's
Right.
illegal.
yes.
There's a law.
Right.
Mhm.
It seems to me
it increases the penalty if you were found to have crossed that line into the realm of
In
hate
some
speech,
respect.
in some respect.
Yeah, so there's a judgment involved. What makes me very, very nervous is there's a third party who gets to tell me whether or not what I've said is hateful.
Right.
And if that third party, for some reason, has a different worldview than I do, or doesn't like my view, or has, yes, leave it there, or is a member of a different party than I'm a member of,
Right.
I'm very concerned that suddenly I'm at risk of punishment for something I said, because they've made a judgment about it.
Sounds a little like fascism.
Sounds a little like fascism to me.
Well, the point I was going to make is that I think that the part that it's like if something's actually truly hateful, we can all agree we wish it weren't to be said.
I don't want it said.
I don't want it said.
anyone to be hurt with my words or anyone else's
No.
words.
However, what you said is totally true. As soon as somebody gets to control anyone's language, we're on a very slippery slope. But here's the other part that I feel like people are really lost on this whole concept. And it's the marketplace of ideas, and that your poor ideas and your hurtful, bad ideas, if you're allowed to express them, they won't be bought.
Yeah.
They won't be bought. And it is the freedom of speech and the ability in our country
Yes.
to put out this really awful product with our words.
Right.
Yeah.
We have just like a company has the right to put out a product that is terrible. They have every right
Yeah.
to sell a product that doesn't work, that breaks down.
Mhm.
But what will happen is people will stop buying it as soon as they figure out it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's the same
Unless
thing
you
in
tell
the
me I
market.
can't buy it, then I'm going to want it.
That's right. That's right. If you tell me I can't, you're very right. It's the same thing with words and ideas.
Yes.
If you're told, that's true. But what people aren't understanding is when people are allowed, as long as they're allowed, everyone should be allowed to put their ideas and opinions and even hateful thoughts out in the marketplace of ideas. They will not be purchased. Yes, a few people will purchase them,
Yes.
but very few will, and it will diminish and go away.
I believe in a society and a world where I should have the opportunity to endeavor to change John's mind
Mhm.
about his worshiping the devil. Back to his t-shirt
Right.
for a second.
Right.
His example a minute ago. And somebody should have the right to try to change my mind about what it is that I worship or what it is that I believe in through dialogue, through
But a
conversation.
club is so much quicker, Larry.
It's more certain.
Yes.
And the problem is that once we give someone the power to club you or
Yes,
me
right.
for our beliefs, we've lost our freedom.
Yes.
And we have become a fascist state.
And that's my point. That's why I'm pointing out what I think is lost is that it's a marketplace, and the words and the ideas are something we're selling, just like a good or service. And if they don't stand the test, they will fall apart. But if you're not allowed to say them, and if you're not allowed to put out all ideas and all things, even if they're seen as hateful, then suddenly we've gone down a slippery slope. And especially when there becomes a power somewhere over here that gets to make that decision,
Mm-hmm. You're really in trouble because
You're in big
social
trouble.
pressure is enough. Most of us won't speak up.
Ah.
There's plenty of studies on this. Most of us will not speak up if the majority seems to hold a view, whatever that view is. We just
Right.
aren't going to do it.
right?
At the same time, we must maintain a society where we can do it.
Right.
And
So
to your
let's
point
let's
about
say,
free marketplace of ideas is part of what you're saying.
let's say we have two choices then. So Barry has said something I disagree with. My two choices are walk away or protest against Barry. Which one is going to give more energy to Barry's conversation? Walking away or reacting?
Well, walking
to it?
away probably will take the energy away.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, you're right.
Right. If I stand up and I start yelling at Barry
Yeah.
against his views, then it's going to give more energy. It's going to galvanize. It's going to solidify his views and even probably cause other people to come to his cause.
Well, it's
or if I just
possible.
simply walk away.
Yeah, and there's a time, certainly, to do what we're doing now. There's a time to present another perspective, to present another point of view. That time may not be the time he's pushing so against you.
Right.
At the same time, we do need in the free marketplace of ideas to put our ideas out, and if people like them, they like them, and if they don't, they don't. And the more mature we become, the more we endeavor to examine ideas without bias, examine ideas based on their intellectual content or value, not on our feelings.
Mm-hmm. So if we de-escalate,
Yeah.
take a step back. And in fact, if I disagree with Barry, I'm not going to tell Barry about it. I'm just going to go preach to the choir.
Well, it's a lot more comfortable to do that, that's for sure. It's a
That's
lot
right.
easier to do that, that's for sure.
Well, Dad, what you've touched on is this concept of groupthink.
Yeah.
And it's so dangerous.
It's so dangerous.
It's so dangerous.
Yeah.
And of course, what we endeavor to do here at Tipping Points is to take what's happening in the world and talk about these things, but internalize it.
Yeah.
And so that we might grow and be better people and become not only in our own personal lives and our relationships, but also as a part of this country and a part of this world. And so as we look at this concept, where you've said there's all kinds of studies that show when you're in an environment where your opinion differs from the majority, most people are afraid to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And what's happening with Antifa is they're creating a world in which you're not only afraid to speak, but you're afraid to even go places when
Yes.
you're there
Right,
to
absolutely.
express your opinion.
Yeah.
And when we create an environment in
Afraid
which
to wear a t-shirt.
we're afraid to wear a t-shirt
Right.
or a hat, when we create that,
Yeah.
whatever it
It's
is,
something great.
whatever,
Yeah.
yeah. But when we create an environment where we're not allowed, where we feel so afraid to express our opinion, then as we look through history, you will find that is usually, maybe always, but oftentimes for sure, it is that descending idea that is the greater truth. Because groupthink has taken over
Right.
and created a rut, and everyone just agrees with it, and they don't question it, and they go along with it, and it's someone who stands up and says something different that is against that, and that finally is heard, that actually changes the motion in which we're moving into a better, more positive, more prosperous world to live in.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Freer.
a freer, that's correct, a freer place to live, but a better place, an idea that transforms things, is allowed to be expressed. And when we begin to create a world where you have to agree with this idea, this concept, then we are stifling what what we often call a brainstorm
Yeah.
from occurring, where
Yes.
that storm creates lightning, that lightning creates light.
Yeah.
You know, so it's so dangerous to be in groupthink and not feel safe
That is the key.
to express your
For the-
view.
Yeah, for the descending point of view.
And it's so easy to get caught up in groupthink because you want to get along, you want to be part
Sure.
of something.
Yeah.
Right? I want to be part of something bigger than I am.
That's right.
Even if I know that it's wrong, I can get sucked in.
Yes, it's easy to get sucked into groupthink. I know for myself, over the last year, I've really challenged my own opinions and my own ideas, even to the point where sometimes I'm thinking, oh yeah, I think this is a higher truth. And then I'll even jump back to another side of the argument and go, wait a minute, I think this is a higher truth. And as I go through this soul searching, I know I get closer to the truth. And so let's think about where we're getting sucked into groupthink, and also where is it that we're being the Antifa in our own lives? In other words, where is it that we are pushing away differing opinions, differing ideas? Where is it that we're having an emotional response to somebody's opinion just because it's different than my own or our own? As we begin to identify our own ways that we are falling into this trap of trying to shut people down for having differing opinions, as we begin to identify where it is that we get stuck into groupthink, then we can break out. We can break out more and more out of that box and open our mind and look at things for truth, for a greater understanding, and move into what we're about here, which is seeking truth and spreading love. And so don't miss part 2 of our discussion of Antifa and freedom of speech. Hope to see you next week.